Ha! I think I turned that off. Hello and welcome everybody. I hope everything's working. So I've got a new computer and I'm using its camera and I've plugged everything in. It came on Friday and I've updated everything, 1.5 terabytes of files across. So it'd be good to know that I have sound. Oh, yeah, Timber says 5x5, so that's brilliant. Thanks, Timber. So yeah, new kind of webcam look and yeah, well, what can I say? Exciting new computer. It was actually a lot easier than I thought it would be to get it to work, so that's good. So let's say hello to people who've slipped into chat and thank my moderators. Now Digger will be along in a minute. He said he'd be a bit late, but we've got Timber and Norm. Well, it's Mother's Day in the US. For some reason they have it in May. The UK have it in March. I don't know, but I guess the UK one came way earlier because it's been around for centuries. I don't know why it's in May in the US. Somebody will no doubt tell me what it relates to. But anyway, he's off doing that. And mums come first. We all know that. So, but thank you, Timber, for making it here and Digger when he comes along later. Right, who's come in? Well, Stephen, hello. Hello to everyone I've already said hello to in chat. And hi to Stephen. Yep, I think everyone's okay here. Nathan asked, will there be another Great Model Railway Challenge? I hope they make one because they're awesome to watch. Do you know, I can't see it now. It's been 5 years since COVID and it was off before COVID. It wasn't really landing and then COVID happened. So I just can't see it now. It's been too long. So yeah, sorry. They were fun to do and it is a shame. And it's always good to boost any hobby model railways to the general public. George says another Mac. Yeah, I got a Mac Studio. Do you know, I hate to say this, I use Blender all day, every day, and it has got to the stage where when I do something, when I have a lot of textures on, it does the spinny wheel. So I go to the screen and read something or do something. And then I come back and it's finished. And I'm just wasting so much time waiting for the spinny wheel. But I don't wait for it. I go and do something else. And then I come back and I get distracted and da-da-da-da-da. So all in all, I feel really ineffective in what I do at the moment. Very inefficient. So that last Mac had 64 gig of RAM, but it had an Intel chip. This Mac has an Apple M3 chip, M4 chip, anyway, whatever. It's got one of the later chips and it has, dare I say, 128 gig of RAM. And I rendered out the very short video, admittedly, 30 minutes, that I've got coming. And normally rendering a video would take quite a while. Maybe an hour or so. It was done just like that in a couple of minutes. And a part of it is actually it's slow because it's going up onto my NAS to pull down the files over at that connection. So it can be a bit upset by sort of, it's on Ethernet, but speeds. But anyway, that's enough about Macs. I do love my Macs. Everything I have is Mac. And people will rave about PCs and they'll say Macs are expensive, but I literally plugged the two, my Time Machine backup from the old Mac in and it just copied it across and everything worked apart from I updated to a later version of Blender and it had moved where everything was. So it took me a while to go and just reload Blender, but probably 10 minutes. And all the Apple apps work fine, but some of the others needed updating from Intel to Apple chip versions because they were on old versions obviously the two are quite different. So there we go. It's very exciting and very expensive. Hey. So hi to Stephen. Hi to Walkabout Games. Hi to FCAT Fracasso. Hey, wavy pink hand. Hi to Chris R. And Chris says the UK's Mother Day is on Mothering Sunday, which is a few weeks before Easter Sunday, which is why it moves each year. Yeah, it does move. Sometimes it's almost on my birthday, which is mid-March. Sometimes it seems way later. It was later this year. Obviously, Easter was later. Walkabout Games says, hate the spinning wheel when using Blender. Yeah, I mean, I got to a stage where you do something wrong. You just hit the wrong button and you're like, do I just crash it because it will be quicker? There's no way to stop it. That's the thing. And Nathan says, Kathy, where do you find your inspiration to do what you do for models? What inspires me to do scratch building is think of ideas that have never before and think, would it be awesome to see the real world? So I like sci-fi, so I find my inspiration from the things that I watch and the things that I play. and the things that I would like to do. So the sewer district was because I wanted to do sewers for Scut City. This is the training grounds because I saw a concept art of a level from Titanfall when I was flicking through things, and I was like, that's a really neat idea. And one of my star sets is inspired by Titanfall. So it's just generally everything around. And now because I get to make things up, people say to me, why don't you do model railways anymore? And it's like, have you tried designing stuff for model railway people? For a start, I mean, I've showed off dioramas that I have spent 6 months to a year creating. And I've watched 10 men walk in and I have not had a single good word said about it. All they have done is pick it apart, pick it apart, pick it apart. It is soul destroying to do stuff for model railway people quite often. And when I said that to someone afterwards, he said, oh no, it's really good. It's brilliant. It's one of the best dioramas I've ever seen. It actually got full points, which I think was a bit of a swizz. It was a couple under on the contest that year at the NMRA. It was, you know, loads of detail, loads in there. I thought it was probably one of the best things I've ever done. I've actually sold it now because it was very big. And the guy who got it was very pleased, and he split it up and made it into a modular. It was big enough, you know, it was this sort of size. He made it into a module for his narrow gauge railway. And he said, there was so much stuff inside. I opened this building up, which you can just see dimly through a wilderness. There was all these like crates and stuff. So I took them all out and I moved them around. But that group of people never said a single word of compliment. And you go into other hobbies and there were different problems. There were different problems in every hobby. I was chatting to someone who says, oh, cosplay is full of, you know, maybe younger people, and they're really, you know, just so bitchy, I think was the word she used. You know, it's so hard. So like every hobby has its problems, but it's so hard to pick something in model railways that isn't geographically based and isn't going to have a rivet counter pulling it apart. Whereas if you do sci-fi, you can do whatever you like. And realistically, nobody is going to be able to tell you whether that rivet's in the right place. Especially if you say, well, it's inspired by it, it's not an exact copy, because IP reasons, I can't just copy it. So of course it's going to be different. It just has so much more freedom to it. So it means I can do absolutely anything I fancy, and that's why I love it. So Tim, hi Tim. Tim is has done this amazing little railway that's about this big, little model railway, in a plastic tub, and he is taking it to Kilimanjaro next month, and he's going to run it on the top of the summit. I think it's in Railway Modeler this month, is it, Tim? So if you pop out and get Railway Modeler, you will be able to see a picture of his little tub. Smallest model railway practically in the world, going up Kilimanjaro. It's probably the first model railway on the top of Kilimanjaro. It's probably the first model railway on top of all the French glaciers that you ever tested it on. Probably the first model railway on the Clement Hills that you tested on today or yesterday, even, Tim. So yeah, it's definitely a first. So Timber says, okay, you used to get lag doing CAD back in the day. Had a 386, took 8 seconds between commands, upgraded to a 386 with maths co-processor, and it went down to 3 seconds. You know, I think the new Apple chip is better with the graphics program. So the things that I do are video editing and graphics, heavy 3D graphics, and both of those are very, very hungry on stuff. Tim says, Port du Nord gets lots of positive response when I take it out. However, model railways are not easy to design. They're not, are they? Anyway, that's my little pet hate about it. Navy says, that's a shame, all your hard work. Does it feel like it's all for nothing sometimes? In my opinion, I think people go too far sometimes, including me, to say here just so, but I think it's a preference. So I don't mind criticism. I think we only grow if we have criticism. It's the way it's delivered, I think, sometimes. And one of the guys said, well, I'm criticising you because, you know, there's so little to do. So I'm nitpicking because there's so little to criticise. And I feel like going, so why does it need a criticism if all you're doing is nitpicking little things like the Vice, which was a kit, had one of those sort of, they're like, got a bobble on each end and they go up and down and you use them to spin the bench Vice closed. And it was up. And he said it wouldn't be up, it would have fallen down. And I thought, well, yeah, my dad used to stick up, so I'm not totally averse to it. Plus, it's a kit, so it's not like I was going to redo that one small little white metal casting to make it go down. You know, it was that sort of level of stuff they were picking. And it is interesting because he was like, well, I'm picking because there's so little wrong. Yeah, but that's where you need to go with the praise sandwich. And this is the thing. If you're going to criticise someone, A, make sure they actually want your criticism. If you're a random person on the internet, the chances are, depending where they've posted it, of course, and what they've said, the chances are they don't want a whole list of things they've done wrong. I already know everything I've done wrong. I am a far worse critic of my own work than anybody out there. And I hate most of my work. It's only years later when I've forgotten all the flaws and I can't remember what they are that I actually come to appreciate some of the stuff a bit more. But I'm really, really critical of my own work generally. And, you know, you need to give the praise in between. Not empty praise, just, oh, it looks great. But try and find something good to say about things if you are going to give criticism. So, yeah. So Walkabout Game says, I've started switching to sci-fi sculpting because of rivet counters log. So I agree with you. Yeah, it is so hard, especially I think with the internet. But, you know, I've had people just walk up to me and say, I hate this, and walk off. You know, it literally sometimes is, how do people do that? And I think the internet is actually worse. But I've had people be ruder to my face actually than I have on the internet generally. Generally on the internet, I find people are very fine, but there's something about people seeing something in person. And I'd have this. I walk around with a friend and he talked very loudly about all the problems with the layout. And I'm like, the people are listening to you. You know, try and be polite about it. If you want to criticise something, do it so they can't just hear you walk up and go, oh, I hate this. You know, there's bound to be things you dislike in most things, and there's bound to be things you really like. Look for the really like when they're listening. Anyway, there we go. So Tim says, yes, Dune Railway Modeller, 3rd page in the news section. So guys, Dune Railway Modeller if you want to see all about it. Stephen, the thing about rivet counters is when you look at the channel, you're often confronted with, this channel has no content. Very interesting. I actually remember being really disappointed with, there was one guy who knew everything, always had the answer, would point out the issues, but knew everything. And he brought one of his own models along to show off once. And I was really disappointed that his stand-in wasn't at the level that his talk was, because I was really looking forward to seeing what he'd done. And it can be a real disappointment when you see the work of people who've been critical in a really helpful way, who have a good eye, and then you see their own work and you're like, yeah, that's a shame. I wanted you to be better. So there. Tim, I was late on this evening because I need a better sleeping bag for Kilimanjaro. Forgot the time. Yep, you definitely need a better sleeping bag for up there, I'm sure. So Doug says, just add rust, then the vice handle will stay wherever it's put. I should have said that, shouldn't I? I said, oh, it's just rusted up there. It's a twerk. Stephen, we're British, we handle criticism better than praise. Oh, I absolutely hate it when people start doing flattery. I really, really hate it. There are people on the internet who'll be like, you're amazing, I love you, you're wonderful, doll. And I'm like, oh, I can't cope with this. Oh, flattery, not, I'm British, we don't do this. We do not do this. So Navy says, are you saying you need a break from the hobby sometimes in order to appreciate more of your work, if I'm saying that right? Sometimes, in my opinion, what keeps me going is for the impossible. What keeps me going to the impossible is to keep going. I think it's good to mix it up, and I always have about 20 projects on the go. So if I get bored of one thing, and I'll be pulling one of them out in a bit to say what I've been doing on it, I can go into something else. But to be honest, this is my job, and I love my job. I love modelling, but I picked a job that plays to all the strengths. Doesn't make me any money, but it plays to all the things I enjoy. I love designing stuff more than I like painting and modelling it sometimes. I love designing stuff. I love sci-fi. So I'm really blessed to be where I am. So I don't feel I need a break from the job. Sometimes I feel like I need a break because it is all I do. It used to be my hobby and now it's my job. So I've got computer games, and actually today I logged on to SWTOR, as I call it. It's Star Wars: The Old Republic. And this is one of the exciting things about my new Mac, is it has an Apple chip. And Star Wars: The Old Republic used to not be playable on a Mac because it's made for a PC. And then when they brought it out last year, it was only available for the new Apple chipset. And earlier this year I was going to go and play it because I was able to out on the Mac and playing it, and I couldn't play it. And it did not at all influence my decision to get a new Mac with a different chipset. But I was like, I'm logging on. I can now do it. So I spent an hour and a half, and it's like keyboard controls. I'm used to an Xbox with a controller. I haven't used a keyboard in 20, 30 years. So it's WASD, and I keep hitting the wrong one. I keep when I should be doing just like going ahead. I'm struggling to, shoot people. I think I'm just mashing keys when I should be, picking the right attack. I should pay more attention to that anyway. But it's set in the Old Republic. I'm playing a Jedi Knight, and they're heroes, which is really cool. So I'm really keen to play it. It looks good. So there we go. So Nathan says, sometimes it feels hard to find the good stuff than the bad stuff for me. I'd rather not say anything and find what's interesting about it instead of saying what's wrong. I think for me, you need to be critical of your own work to achieve a certain standard, but you also need to be forgiving of yourself when you're learning something or when things don't go right. It is easy to get too bound up in it. It is a hobby. You are supposed to enjoy it. If you're not enjoying it, put it on one side. And if it doesn't get finished, well, it's a hobby. It's not a job. You don't have to have a deadline. You don't have to pass an award. You don't have to do anything except enjoy yourself. And if your standard isn't as high as the person next to you, that doesn't matter because it's your hobby. You set your own standard. And actually today's talk, which this is very neatly segueing into, is perfect versus good enough. And I'm actually going to talk about the Kickstarter first, but we are going to be talking about perfect versus good enough as the concept, because frankly, I can be a bit of a perfectionist, and sometimes you just need to be good enough, and learning when to do it is what makes your hobby enjoyable. When do you need that perfection and when do you not? So yeah. Timber says he has the motto, if you can't say something positive, don't say anything at all. Yeah, my mum says, if you can't say anything good, don't say anything at all. So yours, if you can't say something positive, don't say anything, is really good. And I use that on the internet. I never criticise stuff on the internet. I might say Andor was boring and slow for season 1, but I never actually criticised. And actually, I found it really good when I watched it back to back rather than spread out over the weeks. But I do think that's a really important thing. I think the other one I really like, we used to have up at work, which was, in a world where you can be anything, be kind. And I think if we were all a little bit more kind to people, especially new people coming into the hobby who have got to have their learning curve, they've got to get the practice. Fine motor skill is practice. I am not as good as I used to be because I don't do as much modelling. I'm much better on Blender than I used to be because I do it all day. But there's definitely things where people can artificially gatekeep or keep people out of the hobby, or demoralise starting people, or even really experienced people without realising it. So John says, that's Tig, some of the layouts at the 16mm Association show earlier in the year would drive the rivet counters mad, but look great. I would say I've always liked scenery because there's less rivet counting in it. And if it goes wrong, you just put another layer on. I will always look at a style over substance when it comes to things like model railways. I will always look for something that looks cool over something that, it still needs to run, sadly, but something that doesn't. So Stephen, working night shift all the time has hammered my modelling mojo, plus I'm not getting any younger, more's the pity. Yeah, but with age comes great experience, so there's a plus side to it. Walkabout Games, great subject, glad I was home to watch and listen. Cool, well we're going to talk a little bit about one of the holes and the barrier it then causes for me doing modelling, this perfect versus good enough. Nathan says, sometimes when I do scratch building my trains, some parts of it do feel hard, but when I get to the hard stuff, I just do it, becomes rewarding, and it's fine to watch it run and it feels a success. I think that's right. I think sometimes you have to persevere. I've got an example here, and I'll do it now rather than later. So I was designing walkways, and this is a walkway. Oh, look, I can just vaguely hold it up there and hope it goes in focus. This was my first iteration of the walkway. It has a little bit that clips on the end here. So it has to print this way round. Yep, flat on the build plate. But this, yeah, way too big. Sadly, I can't show you the third iteration. You're going to have to use your imagination for that. But the second iteration, much finer. I put the grid on, much finer. And this has got the ends on, as you can see. And it's a walkway, so it goes down. And I added underneath, oops, choose the same size one. I added underneath something to make it more interesting underneath. So this one was, I could have lived with it, but I didn't really like it. This one, fine, except this is really smooth because it all has to print this way down on the build plate. So as a result, if I move the pipes up, I lose these because they become too shallow to hit. They print that way up and they become too shallow to print properly. And there's just an angle you shouldn't really go over. So this morning at 7 o'clock, so it'd be ready for the live stream, but it isn't because it's still printing because they're long prints. I just put an extra couple of mil down and I put it to print. And while it was doing the first layer, I went, your clips are in midair. So it no longer had these flush on the build plate because I'd gone down a mil or 2 mil. So in the end, I moved the pipes down and I've reprinted a set of these without these pipe bits because they no longer line up. But I'm going to keep these as version 2, so you've got the choice, I think. So therefore, I won't get this totally flush feeling with the pipes and the grid. It will look more like a grid sat on top. It will give it more depth and it will look better. Now, this was good enough. This first one, not good. Not good, too big. Too chunky. This, good enough. The next one, bob on. Just where I want it. So sometimes, and it's 3 lots of test prints, which is over a day of printing across 2 printers, just over a day of printing to get them done. But it's worth it because I wasn't happy. There's a couple of things that niggle at me if I'm not happy, and in the end I end up fixing them. And I think this is just an example of something that sat on my desk, and these will I probably will throw out the first ones. I might keep them, you know, I might not. You know, I will definitely, I'm going to be using them, and there may be places where you can't really see them, so I might keep them for Scut City. Definitely finding everything really much, there's always I'm doing 5 of these style packs, there's always that urge to rush and to fix things, and that's why I test print. And I will say that most stuff test prints okay, but there's always at least 1 or 2 items every week that I just keep pushing back because I'm just not happy with the test prints. Just the way they look. Like I feel that the Orc Scrapper style pack that I've done is really quite chunky, but that is the look that people go with for it. So it's the look I've embraced. Personally would have made it a lot finer, probably. But anyway, there we go. Yeah. So Doug says, the first 90% of the work takes 90% of the time. The last 10% of the work takes the other 90% of the time. Knowing when to stop is important. I think that's true. And one thing I find is when it's for me, I can just adjust a 3D print and, you know, actually just cut a bit off or smooth it or sand it. And sometimes if it doesn't fit, if I'm doing it to sell, it has to be right. And this is where actually Doug's one of my print testers, along with Tig, John, who's on. And John's machine always prints a lot tighter than mine, except I think his bridge is better than mine because I'm printing at 0.08. Doug prints things at a variety of different layer heights in different directions and gets different results. And it can be really challenging because I design it all fits perfectly on mine. And then they go, oh, it doesn't fit. And I'm like, oh, now I've got to work out why it doesn't fit. Is it a tolerance issue? Is it a print issue? So it can, just that last 10%, as Doug says, can take forever. Tim, designing is fun. I enjoy it a lot, but it can be frustrating at times when you've done through 10 test prints and it still doesn't work. Yes. And Tim does a lot of scratch built engineering stuff. Now for me, my engineering is fairly simple. I do know the tolerances to make things clip in. I know what the tolerance is, the gap should be for anything. Whereas Tim is making points that aren't just normal points. If you look at his channel, you'll see they're like curved monorail, hanging monorails, you know, the thing with things on both sides. You know, they're all very bizarre that Tim does. So I can imagine it will take quite a long time because they're not treading a known path. So yeah. Nathan, it is true that nature is inconclusive like that. There's no right or wrong of how it's done. Right, not just being a hobby. I'm saying that right. Please correct me if I'm wrong about that. No, I mean, one of the things about nature that makes it far easier to model than railways is a tree can be this big in a model or it can be this big in a model, and you'll probably be right with both of them. People generally don't make trees big enough in their models. So you can use N scale, HO, O scale trees probably, all on the same model railway, and they can all look fine. It's just when you get to a person is a certain height, and you can have children and you can have grown-ups, but nobody should really be taller than an 8-foot door. Whereas if your tree is taller than the house or shorter than the house, it's not an issue. So it does make it much easier. You have to be bob on exact with getting your buildings right. Hi Andy from Somerset. Great to have you with us. So Nathan, Kathy, I wonder if Tron is a good inspiration for you, in your opinion. Imagine if all the lights worked just like in the movie. If you have models based on the movie, that's a new one coming out. I've seen the new one coming out. I actually think Tron would be quite hard to do, but I do have a cyberpunk themed one, and I have got barriers. They're actually upstairs, but one of my test prints came off this morning, and so this is a translucent print. So I've got barriers that use these. And you could light them, but actually it's quite hard to light without losing the colour. So I think you'd have to light with red. But I think Tron's quite hard. I'm trying to, at the moment, be more commercial in my focus and hit a number of actual games. So I'm looking for games that I know people will buy for terrain, because I actually do need to make some money on this as well. And as a result, I am definitely going to be doing like Orc Scrapper. I'm not a fan of Warhammer, so I'm not touching that really. A Galaxy for the Star Wars lot. And it has got Shatterpoint extenders, so you can use it for Shatterpoint as well as Legion. I'm doing a modern one for if you're doing modern wargaming. I'm doing a mech one, which is based off Titanfall, but there's games out there that use a lot of mechs nowadays. And like Fallout or Arsenal or some of these, Blackout, some of these. And the fifth one is Cyberpunk, which also has games. It's a very distinctive style. And I want to be able to use these afterwards in Scut City. So I want them to fit into there. Stephen says, I remember when you did the Dagobah diorama. It's just over there. There was a point where if you had a change of heart, it could have become the Forbidden Forest from Harry Potter or a scene from Indiana Jones. Yeah, that is so true. It's always one of those things that morph. Walkabout Games. Every time I test print, I get new ideas. Besides finding mistakes, testing is so important. It is, and actually for me, having people like John and Doug who are happy to test print for me is really good. And then they throw out ideas that can be really useful, because Doug certainly comes at it from a different direction to me. John certainly comes at it from a different direction to me. So, and Christoph, who's done previous Kickstarters, Tamsin, who's done, they all come at things and give you these ideas that can be really good and really helpful. And you're always looking for stretch goal ideas. I mean, I've got the base locked down now. In fact, I've done all the base models, I think, apart from the Kickstarter exclusive models. I'll talk about that in a minute. Yeah, Tim says, the Latigue monorail point turntable drove me mad. Took months to get that right. But it does look good now, Tim. And if you don't know what the Latigue monorail looks like, go and Google it, because it's really fascinating. Nathan, Kathy's one of those pictures, China or Japan behind you. That building, I was just curious. Probably China. A lot of the pictures there are from my trip to China. I've got a friend who lived in Hong Kong, and I've been to Hong Kong for about 4.5 weeks in total across 3 visits, and we did China before one of them for like 10 days. So probably China. Haven't been to Japan yet. It's top of the bucket list. Is Godzilla one of the options you could sell? I know by looking on YouTube, a lot of the people make a lot of money on that. Is that what you want? I'm curious. No, I'm looking for things that are terrain for games. So I need things that are game worthy, 28 to 40 mil, sort of 32, 35 mil, preferably terrain, which means it's buildings, scenery, structures, maybe miniatures. So it's that sort of thing. Big franchises, I can't sell because I'll just get a cease and desist letter. So it's got to be something that's more generic. But it's a good time to put up the video. So, am I here? Yep, I'm still there. This is my latest Kickstarter, the training grounds. I'm basically just got a lot of video of me showing off the modular system. So this is the kind of thing that sells really well, I hope, for terrain. It's you can click in doors and windows, wall blanks. It just clicks in. It's just a little catch, and it just all mostly sits with gravity, to be honest. You can do multicolour. It's been optimised for multicolour printing. So these pieces are separate. So it's not done as multicolour, it literally is two pieces that you click together. So it's really simplistic multicolour. But this is all just straight out the printer at the moment. I haven't painted these yet, that's this week. It's going to be all the weathering. And there is a spacer or a sort of a topper, sorry, a spacer or roof where you can stack them up like you can see at the back. This is the Galaxy set, and you can, the extender gets it to the same point as shatter point. So you can, match in with that. And then there's parapets and things like that will go on that will fit well with your models. And there's actually all 5 sets merged in here. There's the Cyberpunk walkways, which I've done in blue translucent. There's Cyberpunk, there's Modern, that's Mech that I'm looking at the moment. There's Junk there, and you can see the junk all put around. It's very distinctive. It's that kind of scrapper look, and the Cyberpunk, which is really quite cool. So the Mech and Modern look the most similar. That's the Modern one there that I'm just pointing to, which comes with sandbags. And they all have a different parapet, a different door and window. They all dress up differently. And the good thing about the parapets is you can just take them off, the sandbags, the roof toppers, whatever I'm calling them this week. You can just take them off and put them on the ground, and they act as barricades and scatter. So they're really useful to just move around as you want them. Now, some of them are probably more robust than others for that, and I actually might put bases. And it's all on GridForge. So this is GridForge. I don't know if many of you know it. I know Doug knows it. I know Tamsin will know it. But it's basically a system where you have this base underneath. You could just see it there. And you just slot these tiles in. So that's my Galaxy tile. And that's my cracked tarmac. And all of the sort of ones that are down at the moment, apart from the ones in the middle that are sort of bone white, are from the base set. And then the rest are from the sort of bone white ones. There's one to match each of the different 5 style options. And they can click together if you want. Oh, that too is telling me that there's 2 different styles. There's a plain concrete building. There's actually a plain one as well. There's 3 that has nothing on. But I think hiding layer lines is easy if there's a bit of movement in it like these. So that's the concrete one. And then it's all on a 3-inch cube. And then the other one is the damaged one. You can see all the rest of them are damaged. So you can have really nice sort of damaged feel if you want, or you can have a more modern concrete feel. And then this now is, I just needed to show you some modelling videos really to have going while I'm talking. So this then is me just moving everything around and setting up each of the 5 sets. And I'll talk about the 5 sets as I set them up. But first, a cup of tea. What's a deceased letter? Oh, cease and desist. It means that the person who owns the intellectual property, like Star Wars would be Lucasfilm or Disney, or Godzilla would be whoever owns the Godzilla franchise, or the rights in your country, writes to you and threatens legal action because you've infringed on their copyright of that particular. So I do Galaxy inspired. I do a lot of Star Wars inspired because I watch a lot of Star Wars, but I will never ever say that it's Star Wars, and I will make sure it's not a direct copy. So I will look at something and be inspired by it, but I won't look at it and copy it. Though I do have an exact copy of Maul Scimitar, which I'm not quite sure what to do. It was a personal project, but I might create a sort of playable version and show that as the Kickstarter, and then just have this as an add-on or something. One of the joys of this time of year is my mint is now up in the garden, so I'm on mint tea again. And I literally just pick a sprig out every day and shove it in my tea. It's really nice. So this is the modern set. And I've got loads of these buildings printed, and I'm literally just shoving stuff in and out. The doors go in from the bottom and the door surrounds click in from the top. So there's a lot of up and downing with it. And then you put the top on. You can clip the tops. The only ones you can't clip are the ones which have got every slot cut out. And to be honest, if I was using it for Star Wars Legion and I'd set it up and painted it, I would just glue it on at that point. But for now, you know, I'm about to take them all apart to paint them tomorrow. I'm going to start painting. I think my last of my test prints for all of the base packs are now done, and I filled the entire base there. So because of that, I'm not in a rush to glue or clip anything at this point. Yeah, and then Doug has just said the same. I don't think they ever really do sue particularly, but cease and desist normally means that the platform on which you are selling them will take you down. So if you're selling on Etsy, if you're selling on My Mini Factory, if you're selling on Kickstarter, they will just take it down. So any of the big routes to sell, you'll just lose everything that you've done. And, you know, people like My Mini Factory don't really like you selling stuff with IP because it gets them takedown letters. And there are definitely games like Halo Flashpoint came out recently by Mantic. Disney don't seem as fussed, if I'm honest, about Star Wars as some of the others. So this was Halo Flashpoint, and I was going to do a forward operating base for this rather than the training grounds, and I pivoted to the training grounds because quite a lot of cease and desist letters went out early about Halo, and I didn't want to. I don't really know a lot about forward operating bases, so I was going to be heavily inspired by Halo. And I didn't really want to be that close on something that was sending loads of cease and desist letters out. So I stopped, and I fully understand why they do it. They've paid for the license. I haven't paid for a license, which is why I'm always inspired by and very careful. So Scut City is in the Star Wars universe when I'm playing my RPG in it, but is not in the Star Wars universe when I'm not playing my RPG in it. It's in a different universe. So yeah. So this is the modern set. It has roller doors. It has that sort of design, which is off a modern warehouse. And some of these, you see, you can put 2s on 1s, 2s on 2s, 1s on 1s, all these sorts of things. So there's loads of different ways you can stack them to get height. And vertical play is always really good. They're all exactly on a 3-inch cube. If that worries you, you can put in the Shatterpoint extenders. And once the extenders are in, then it's fine. You'll be on a different level, effectively. So yeah. What did Doug say? So Nathan, measuring for me is a struggle. I hardly know it, and reading too, but that doesn't stop me from doing my scratch building because it's unique. Even if though I have autism, I still push through. And I think that's the important thing. You know, it is. Some people can see things. Some people just can see what a lump of marble will become, and they become a sculptor. Other people can do a scratch building and they can look at a Dyson and go, well, that's a spaceship. Other people look at Dyson and go, it's a Hoover. You know, different people have different skills, and I'm just feel very grateful that, you know, I can see 3D designs and I can choose what I want to do and do it because that's what I do. But on the other hand, I also picked a job which I could do, you know. Doug, a little while ago in a galaxy slightly far away. Yeah, that's the one. I do call them Galaxy, so they're Galaxy ones. Yeah, Doug's in my RPG group along with John, and I've just started GMing. So they just found a spaceship last week, and this week it's the untangling of what are they going to do with that spaceship? Is it really theirs? When they know who owns it, because they found that on the sort of computer. So yeah, there may be some trouble shaking out from that tomorrow night, Doug and John. John knows because I was talking to him about it. You know, does anybody know the salvage rules for vessels? So once I've got all this put together, you can see there's different windows. Where the windows don't take the full height, they're either all in one piece in brown, or you can split them and put them in multicolour effectively, just by printing in different pieces. So they do just print separately. There's nothing that requires you to have two spools on at the same time. Doug, possession is 9/10 of the law. Yeah, I think you're assuming people play by the law in somewhere called Rauscutter, which is chosen to sound rough. It actually means rough, I think, in German. Yeah, you're not going to just escape, Doug. Doug was like, and we're going to take all this money last week, and we're going to get all this extra money. And I'm like, no, Doug, you can't have the money. You can't have the money. I need you to be broke. I need you to be broke. I don't want you to have the money. And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, no, Doug, you are not taking the money. You are not. It's really funny. Anyway, I thought it was funny. Timber, it's not Star Wars, it's Sun Battles. You're right. And they're not the Black Sun Syndicate. They're the grey stars. Yeah. Stellar Conflict, says Doug. So Nathan, my uncle Dan in Pennsylvania in Pittsburgh owns a lot of arcade games and pinball machines, even the original Tron and the original Terminator 2. He has those arcade games and so much more. That's really cool. I love video games, but I really like the newer sort of styling and scenery on them. So playing Star Wars The Old Republic makes you realise just how old the graphics are. And I soon get into it. I find it as immersive. But what I really like about them is just the ability for them to have the how can I put this? The inspiration for my modelling, perhaps. And it's easier to do that on a high poly game where you can see loads of detail than it is to do it on a lower something. There we go. So this is the modern set. You can tell because it's got sandbags, which aren't very sci-fi, except they are in Titanfall, which is where I got them from. So originally I was just going to do a Titanfall set, but Dave's taken on doing the marketing for this, and he's been really helpful on inspiring in a number of areas. And one was to do a few more style packs, because I already had Galaxy and Mech, and to split them out so that I could hit more games with the same pack. So if people only want to buy one, that's fine. But if they have multiple games or they want multiple styles, they can get 2 or 3 or go all in and get all 5 packs. And I think the modern and the Mech mix really well. They're actually very, very similar. So you could put those 2 packs together with no problems. So with each pack, you get the buildings anyway. You get the base tiles you can see here, including the ones that print in 2 colours, which are 2 separate prints again, which are the yellow and grey landing zone ones. And you then get the dress up, which goes with it, which was there before. So, Stephen, when I started scratch building model railway buildings, I would photograph Mary besides whatever I was building. She's exactly 5 foot. You're lucky. But people shrink with age. You need to check she's still 5 foot. Doug, I do keep meaning to make an arcade machine from a Raspberry Pi, just finding somewhere to keep it. And the time to make it. You've got a lot on, Doug. Nathan, my Uncle Dan told me there are companies out there that can make games look old, but they're still new games, like old pixels, like arcades, if that makes sense. It does, and you still get people using sprites occasionally. And Doug says there's a load of retro arcade emulators. I never really played in arcades as a kid. It just wasn't a thing anybody did. We were girls, perhaps. This is the Mech set. So I made a mistake and forgot to put the little holes in, those double doors. So I've got a whole set of double doors that can't actually stack on each other, just the buildings. They're the original test prints. So I will have to go through and work out where they are and sort it. But it enables me to do things like this. Nathan, if I went to England, what would you prefer for me to see? As in train stuff, I have things I want to go to, the National Railway Museum, Pendon Museum, any heritage line. They sound really good, and as Timber says, they sound good. There's loads of things to see, that's the thing. And I think a lot of Americans especially make the mistake of thinking they can just do England and it will be a few days. There's a lot to see in England depending what you're interested in, and it's never as quick to get from one place to another as you might think. So yeah, but yeah, oh yeah, Timber says Wales. Wales is a good choice. I'm half Welsh, so yes. And Tim says, I wrote a basic Pac-Man game once. It was called Sackman. Santa going around a maze collecting presents, being chased by self-propelled beer glasses. It sounded really childish until you said self-propelled beer glasses. So Tanda says, Romney Hythe and Dymchurch Railway in Kent. Yeah, New Model Railway says you could spend 2 weeks just doing. Yeah, more model railway stuff than you can imagine. Yeah, and if there's some permanent stuff, but if there's any railway exhibitions on, you need to go and see those. Tim says Barla Lake Railway is great, North Wales, which of course he would, because he's the chairman, one of the chairmans. I discovered watching one of the TV programmes that there's actually 3 chairmans, but actually he's a chairman. London has loads of stuff to do. Yeah, and Timber says, especially narrow gauge, and I think he's talking about North Wales there. But North Wales has some amazing little railways, brilliant. Hi Digger, great to have you here. Don't worry, better late than never. So there we go. Right, this is still the mech set. So this was inspired by Titanfall. If you don't know Titanfall, it's probably my favourite game. I love the art style. I love the game mechanics. It's quite old now. But it's about an 8-hour campaign, so it's just fun, really fun. There we go. And this has a huge amount of parapets because it's got them in concrete and damaged, stripy, non-stripy, and 2 sizes because it's one of the original set. So there's just too many. Now the reason I'm putting these on 3-inch cubes is that some game systems need 3-inch cubes. And if you're worried about that, you can use the ones which you can see there with little gravity blocks, I call them, sticking out so you're lined up on the 3-inch cubes. If you're not worried, you could just place these diagonally, however you liked. So, whilst that's playing in the background, I wanted to talk a little bit more about perfection. What time is it? 10 to 9. Perfection versus good enough. Now, we touched on it earlier, and I have got a model behind me, which I'm going to bring up to talk about my battle with perfection. But effectively, it's the Trailblazer. Now, Doug has just started to print one. He got the same model off Colts 3D. I got it off the Patreon by Tell Us War Games, and he's shrunk his down. Now, I had a number of issues with it, which were partly about my printing. So I hadn't noticed, because I just put it to go, but on a lot of the prints, I had this zigzag, 70%, he says, which I think is how much he shrunk it down. So I have this kind of like dragon skin, salmon skin zigzag effect on it. And it means that none of the edges that have it are entirely smooth because they've got this. And I'm still not 100% sure what causes it. It could be a vibration, but I've got anti-vibration feet on now. It could be a over extrusion, but it's in patches on long straights, and you don't see it if there's loads of curves, and you don't see it on my concrete walls and stuff like that, which makes it much harder to spot when I'm printing stuff like these buildings. What's really good about it though is I have printed in matte filament, and because one thing that I hate about PLA is it's nigh on impossible to sand normal PLA. If you sand it, it kind of goes a bit fibrous, and sometimes it will just melt if you try and use a really fast like sander, like a Dremel type sander. It can just melt it. If you use a mouse, sometimes it just gets too hot and starts going tacky and then comes off in blobs rather than sanding nicely. But matte filament, the bamboo one specifically is the one I've been using, sands beautifully. Just sands really nicely. So you can sand out issues so much better. Now, I'm printing in 0.08, and if I hold this up, you're not going to see very much because it's small. I can't even see the layer lines. You know, it's that fine, which is great. You know, if you can't see the layer lines, it means they're probably not going to show when you paint it. Oh, this is the cyberpunk set just going on at the moment. You can see it's got very distinctive cyberpunk roofs and the barriers. I really like the barriers now. These are the reprints because the first set, I didn't have even spacing on them, and I realised afterwards. So anyway, so apologies to John and Doug, who all went and printed them. I said, oh, I think I'll probably change the cyberpunk ones, but they're still in the folder. And I said, don't print them for now. And none of them noticed that, and they all went off and printed it. I was like, oh, the ones I told you not to print. So yeah, it's I really like the barriers. I've printed a couple of spare ones that are the bigger sort, this size. And I'm going to do some Rancor holding pens because I've got 3 Rancors from Galactic Armory printed, plus a Reek, a Nexu, and a oh, I've forgotten what the name of the other one is. The insecty one. Anyway, yeah, moving on from the arena scene. But anyway, yes, Nexus are cute when they're not eating you. I was going down a bit of a rabbit hole here about my quality of my printing on the Trailblazer. So I had all these print errors and I started to sand it. And I've got it smooth. I mean smooth. But no matter how smooth it is, you always get stepping. And I can't show it you at the moment because I'm too small while this is playing. So we'll actually look at it physically in a bit because it's also really massive. So having gone down the rabbit hole of having to sand it smooth, I was doing this over Christmas when I wasn't working as hard and taking a bit of a break. So I went through and I busy sanded it, and I was using the Spy, you know, really fine 400, 600, 800s grit and getting out all of these salmon skin marks, perhaps filling them a little bit. I made the mistake of using Liquitex acrylic modelling paste that cosplayers use for their filling their stuff, and it doesn't sand very well. And then I realised I've got the flexible one, so I bought the non-flexible one, and I can't say that sands particularly well either. And I still need to finish off the last sand on the floor because I put it on and then just got a bit fed up. And this is the problem. Sanding can get a bit boring. I normally put a book on. It's The Living Force at the moment, where all the High Council go off and help people. Yeah, I think it's a recent canon book. So I'm listening to that. Or, I could put on a live stream or something else. So I'm there busy sanding away over Christmas, and I have devoted hours to sanding this. You cannot see a layer line. Everything has been filled and sanded. I've also been using wood filler for sanding because for terrain, you want something that has high impact, fills it really quickly. But one of the reasons that, it's on my bamboos at 0.08, so it's really hardly got any layer lines anyway, but I've been sanding anyway any curves, because you'll always get layer lines on curves, just because a curve will end up stepped with layers. And you can't avoid that, it's just the nature of 3D printing. The finer layers help, there's less or fewer steps, but that doesn't mean that there aren't any. And you can even see it on resin, which is half the resolution down to sort of maybe a quarter of the resolution, well, a third of the resolution of this, depending what you're doing. FDM's come a long way. So I sanded it, and then I started to glue it together, having sanded it. And it's meant to be kept in 3 or 4 bits that are separate. And when you glue it, there's some tolerances. And obviously I didn't glue something quite straight. I'm still not quite sure. I think it's just slightly hinked, maybe like that, sort of slightly. But then the interior tiles, do I fit them in? But then they're not straight either. So I ended up gluing those flat on the desk and putting them in. And then there's a gap, in the middle. And I'm like, okay, a bit of weight will sink it. And I'm busy. This is now, I started it I printed it probably October, November. maybe somewhere around there. Sanded it mostly through Christmas, and then went on a hiatus, really. And I got it out a couple of weekends ago, and I did a bit more sanding. And I'm now hitting, I'm putting the interior in, I've glued that together, and I need to do some more sanding, because when I sprayed it with spray putty recently, I was like, oh yeah, definitely can see that it needs some work doing. This is the Galaxy set. No prizes for guessing where that comes from with that slotted top on it. So I sanded, and I've sanded, and I've sanded, and I've fettled, and I'm fettling the fit so that everything goes in. And what I found is there's either a gap that needs to be filled, or there's a bit that needs to be sanded off. Nothing has just slid into place once glued. Now that talks probably more about my gluing than about the model itself. Doug will let you know when he's, made his. He's just started printing it, as to whether he has any issues. I don't know if you'll glue it together or not, Doug. But I've, glued it. And the reason Doug's printing it is it's actually the ship that my RPGers have at the moment. They've just recovered it from an asteroid field, and they've landed it in Rauskutta City, and they paid for parking fees, landing fees, and they've gone off to Bunda, Bezadai. Anyway, it's a very powerful family, but this is a bit of a non-one. And they're about to get a comm message from the guy where they've parked it, Garv, who's the basilisk with 4 arms and the grotty little thing, telling him that they need to come back and talk to someone about their ship. Anyway, I'm not giving you any more spoilers for tomorrow night. Anyway, it's been driving me mad on how perfection I've been with it. So when we finish running through this, I will show you what I mean. Let's go look at chat. Nathan says, Kathy, I wonder if you could get a battery tray set and put some 3D printed stuff on it. What would you want it to be? Would it still work the same? Just look is different. Would you want that? I'm going to do it for sci-fi. So actually for sci-fi, I'm going to do a hanging monorail, and I probably won't use a battery. I'll probably use a 3D print cable going round and servo motors. But I've got an inductive car that follows a black line. I've actually got 3 or 4 of them now. I keep finding they're about £10, so they're not expensive. And I'm going to take the car off and put a kind of a hover thing on there, which covers the wheels. So it will go round, and that's going to be some kind of sci-fi thing as well. So that would be on there, and they're both going to be, well, the print cable one, which is sort of attached with hanging bits, will be off 5 volt USB probably. I'm not actually quite sure. I think the servos are 5 volt, but the cars just charge inductive, just charge. Doug, smaller layers make more steps, but individual steps are a lot smaller. They are. They take a lot longer because you've got to do a lot more printing. And I find they won't bridge for taffy. They just will not bridge across. So even a small hole like the one that these clips go into, they just won't bridge across without sagging slightly. Doug says of his Trailblazer, some bits will need to be glued and some filling will be required. Oh yes. Nathan, Kathy, imagine if the Galaxy set had a story behind it that's not related to Star Wars, maybe like storytelling. I wonder, not saying you have to, but it on its own thing. Well, I do a story behind all my buildings eventually, because they're all going to be part of my Scut City, which is on hold at the moment while I'm doing the Kickstarter. But I need to get the tiles done for it and sorted and across. There's a set, which I think I went through a couple of live streams ago, which is still sat on my kitchen table. And because I need to sort the ceilings out and what I'm going to do with those, and I need to sort the backdrops out. But basically, I do have stories coming. I spent an hour this morning writing up the backdrop for all the people that my guys are going to meet tomorrow, and all the buildings for the market district. I've got the Leaping Frog, which is a little hole in the wall that sells frogs however you want to eat. It's a delicacy aimed at Rhodians and people like that who are sort of more I'm going to call them more amphibious in nature. I have no idea whether Rhodians are amphibious, but anyway. And they will also, the idea is that one of these huts could well be like a noodle shop or something like that. And one of the future Kickstarters I want to do is to use these same buildings, but to swap in little shop fronts. John says, too many spoilers. Anyway, Tim says, a clue for tomorrow, a comm message from the parking attendant. Indeed! You will be getting it. You will be opening with it. So you can all wait. None of you will be surprised apart from Mike, who isn't on, who'll be like, why do they all know there's a comm from the Garv, the parking attendant? So yeah, John's like, so yeah, I have got 3 of my RPG guys on here. And I only literally started playing this recently, and I couldn't find anyone to play with. So in the end, I just ended up GMing my own session, and it's been a lot of fun. Yeah, John said you could just put one of these on. He puts one of the roofs on and it stayed on. I think you need to clip if you want to do that because it just fell off with mine. So Doug, only printed the front so far, currently printing the bottom. That's good, yeah. Tim says, I'm sure the Leaping Frog sounds like a pub. Yeah, there are going to be cantinas there. I've named them all. And one of the ones that I think is going to feature quite heavily is the X, which is after X marks the spot, and it's where all the explorers in the area go, the people who are surveying and stuff like that. So there we go. So Nathan, do you think Laurie Calvert's steampunk locomotives are inspiring for your type of expertise to make your own version? One time I made a scratch belt wind-up steampunk engine. It was cool and awesome. I respect people that do steampunk. It's not my aesthetic. I'm more of a hard sci-fi western type of person. So I'm not likely to do steampunk just because I don't like Victoriana in space. It's not the style I want. It's not that I don't like it, and I think Laurie Calvert's work is brilliant. It's just that you design what you love, don't you? And I love classic sci-fi. So, you know, I was watching Doctor Who. This is another aside. The Evil Planet of Evil or whatever it was a couple of days ago. We're in the middle of, I don't know, season 13 or 14 from about 1975 or something. We started back in 1963 and we're just going through everything on BBC iPlayer. So we're in my childhood years now, though I was only a couple of years old in 1975. But I have seen all of these and I've read almost all the books as well because my mum had all of them at one point. Now, this is the scrapper set, the junk set, I'm calling it. So this is aimed at orcs and scrappers, people like that. And you can see it's got a really chunky feel to it. But there we go. Anyway, and I was looking at how they'd managed to do the Planet of Evil, which is a really evil looking planet, filmed in reds and greens with bits of, I presume, string with blonde on and stuff like that. And I'm looking at it thinking, they did that on a shoestring budget. And they spent like 180 million on the Acolyte, and they still managed to make it look like they put a few potted ferns into a sort of jungle scene. So some of these, the reason I'm pointing them is some of these have got flush edges so you can put them against the buildings, because the junk ones actually do stick out a long way compared to the others. So there are a set with flush edges so you can put them against the buildings, and then there's a set that stick out sideways, like the one that's right at the front on the left. You know, sticks out sideways for that reason. So, you know, it's just that I realised after I'd done them that you can put them against the So anyway, we're at the end of this. We can go look at the Trailblazer now. So there's 5 style options. You can see them all there. There's 3 building sizes. There's a 1x1, a 2x1 and a 2x2. And those are 3-inch cubes. And they will stack next to each other. So you can put a 1x1, 2 1x1s on a 2x2 and they stack perfectly. There's single and double slots and there's multiple slot options. So you can have a double door or a single door. And then there's the 3, it's quite hard to see on there, but there's a plain, a concrete and a damaged version of them all. So you can get those 3 textures. So there we go. That is the sneak peek of where I am. And this week I'm going to be painting it. So the next video will be painting terrain, especially the ground terrain. I'm quite keen to put tile grout onto something. I haven't done tile grout for a long time, so I feel the need to get my tile grout out before it goes off. So yeah. Right. So Tig says, I just put another 1x1 on top to weigh it down. Makes a great balcony with a U-shaped rampart. I can imagine, and I haven't done it yet. So Tim says, design a couple of posts so a double roof can be supported on a single building. I could do. I was originally going to do balconies, which are half the length, and I may well do that as a stretch goal. So I just need to, I was originally going to do a lot more sort of balconies sticking out and things like that, and I haven't. So I will think about whether I want to do that as a stretch goal, in which case I won't worry about it. But yeah, posts could be a thing. Well, if it was the jumping frog, it would be in Albuquerque. I don't know that one, Tamsin, but I will Google it after the things. Hot dog. Stephen says, I saw a bit of Doctor Who in a parallel Earth. Interesting to see the Brigadier as a baddie. I vaguely remember that one as well recently. That's a John Pertwee. Oh, which one is that? It's not the Green Death. No. Anyway, I saw that really interestingly. It's the one with the they're drilling to this core and they release something. Anyway, yeah, I vaguely remember that one. So Nathan, Kathy, I have an idea to make planes that are designed to crash, like make them detailed inside and out. So when I crash them on purpose, it would have a cool crash effect for realism. Then just sit there. Ooh, that would be cool as well. I would just actually model them already crashed because I don't like damaging models, but there we go. Timber says, green ooze. I did like the Green Death one. So Tig says, I've added a photo of how I did the balcony to the Livestream channel on Discord. Thanks, John. That's Discord. If you don't know my Discord, I suspect someone like Timber or Digger will go and put the link to it, which they often do in here. And then Nathan, Kathy, do you like the original Doctor Who or what you grew up with? Or the newer stuff, or a little bit of everything. So, Nathan, I grew up with the original Doctor Who, so that's what I love. But I would say, for me, classic Tom Baker, he was my childhood, and he was on forever. And then David Tennant, the new ones. I don't like the really new ones, because I kind of haven't watched the latest guy that much, Ncuti Gatwa. But Jodie Whittaker just seemed to be, you know, oh, this week it's plastics in the ocean. Oh, this week it's mental health. Oh, this week it's no guns. And it was always like issue of the week, which isn't what Doctor Who is. So there we go. Doug says, prefab Prout, King of Rock and Roll, Hot Dog, Jumping Frog, Albuquerque. Okay. Is that prefab Sprout? And Stephen says, the Ambassadors of Death, I think, but don't quote me. It could be. It could be. Sprout, yes. Oh, and Timber's put up the Discord. Right, I'm going to get my model cunningly put over here. Now, this does not have the engines on. Haha. Oops. Right, I really need more space. No, we're going to do this again. Oh. The trouble with real models, I'm going to have to put these off. Move the keypad. Remove the phone, and here we go. Oh no, just kick them. Right, here we go. This is, oh no, when I just stood on them now. Right, putting stuff on the floor works so well. This is the Trailblazer. No, you can't see it. So what I want to do is talk through the problem with perfection. And so this project has been going, we've talked about it a lot. I'm trying to see, so I probably will just end up showing you each of these pieces. This, I will even have done things like sand these edges to get it to fit. And as I look, every single edge, even the stuff underneath, this has got the, I've roughed it up where it sits over, because I was trying to get it a bit flatter. That's another thing to talk about. So every edge has needed sanding. You know, I've got things like, this is a, can we get that in focus? See, that's still got a run on it. I need to sand that again. And I've sanded it once, but I can feel it. I don't know what that is. I think it was I don't know if it's a print issue or what, but it needs more sanding. And this is my problem. Some of it is actually put on by the over extrusion. Some of it is put on by the issues that I have with running too much of the spray putty on it. You know, there's been loads and loads of issues. And the big thing I've got at the moment is there are bits that still don't fit. The inner bit fitting inside has been a nightmare. I have had issues with getting everything to fit. But one of the reasons I brought it down was, the first thing is, whenever you print, and you can see this here, you see that mark on there around this bit. Yeah, you can see, there we go. You can see that there are marks on it. And these are there because of the layers. And I have done spray putty. So this is spray puttied, the sort of colour. So it actually has had a layer of some kind of filler on first, and then a layer of spray putty. And you can see that then everything's been sanded back. I'm really hoping that shows. That I can see there's grey and whatever on all of these areas. Every single area has been sanded at least twice. Once, maybe filled, sanded again, and then spray puttied and sanded again. And the problem I have is that at the moment, and the reason I brought the whole thing down was, I thought, shall I just take a photo? I was like, that's not very exciting, let's bring the model down. So, this is where is perfection getting in the way. Right, here we go, folks. This is bench lifting. That lid needs to go on. See, there's a gap. Now, part of that is because, oops, yeah, that's the inside falling apart. There will always be a gap there because there is a gap. It's just designed with a gap. You see, it's even got a hole at the front. So you can get your finger in. There's a hole so you can get your finger in. Yeah, let me get that back in properly. But this gap is doing my head in. I spent last weekend sanding for 3 or 4 hours. Now, bear in mind, I have sanded to get this piece here to fit in. It didn't fit into the hole when I first did it. And I've actually sanded back in some places, back to the infill, trying to get this to fit. These sides have been sanded. They feel quite rough. But it is definitely, it's even down to the infill because somehow it's just not quite right. And now I'm putting it on. I'm putting this on and let me just show you this. Especially on this edge, it's proud. And when I push it, it goes down. And part of that is because if you look inside, the floor here has a little gap. And it's like, when does this get finished? And as I said to Doug, never print it with the guns attached because I'm probably going to knock them off. Anyway, I'm going to put it on the floor before I knock it off totally. Oh, yeah. Oh, sorry, keep walking into these. So I've had so many problems with that one spaceship. And is it a flaw with the design? Probably not. It's part of it is print issues, part of it will be gluing issues. I didn't glue it perhaps in the order they wanted. I thought it was all flat. Some of it may be slight, it will be gluing. Some of it is the front is just slightly tipped up, so the whole of the interior is a little bit proud. But that, you know, when I first started sanding that, I've taken several millimeters off already. And that gap now around the top that you can see when you look at it, that is actually half of what it was after 2 or 3 hours of sanding. In the end, I just took the whole inside out, turned it upside down, put it on a bit of very rough sandpaper and just pushed it to try and get it sort of flatter. And how good is good enough that I can get on with painting? You know, I pulled out one piece just to show you randomly. I'm like, no, this piece has flaws on it still. It doesn't look smooth. I need to sand this again. When I had sprayed the spray putty, I could see that I hadn't sanded one of the seams on the floor properly. And I knew I was having problems because I'd used the modelling paste to see what it was like, and not very good was the short answer for that sort of thing. And it's like, oh, I need to go through and resand it again. How long before you spent so long sanding it, and actually, are you gaining anything? Now, one or two of the bits will bug me, and I do need to do them. Nobody's really going to see the interior that much, though. And I've still got to finish the interior on the Transport Delta, which has huge honking great lines on the outside, because I did it at 2.2 layer height, I think, on my old printers. Whereas, you know, this was already miles better, apart from the print marks. So what am I doing sanding it so much? Have I got lost down a rabbit hole of unexpected perfection? When will it be good enough? Okay, so Michael Capterton, Inferno is the one with the parallel Earth, one of my favourite from the Third Doctor era. Yes, I remember it was Inferno, yes, because they were going to explode the Earth, weren't they? So, Nathan, I know Disney has their own version of Doctor Who. Is that the one you don't like, or is it okay? I don't know if you know this by how they add Ruby as part of the group to Doctor Who. So, I haven't watched the latest series yet. I've watched the first one of it. That is still part of Doctor Who. Disney just co-funds the BBC. And it has probably been widened out. Like they had a few fantasy elements. But, you know, Doctor Who's been going since 1963. It's not new. It's just Disney came in 2 seasons ago. Nathan Digger told me it was the revolutionary Doctor Who because there was nothing like it, if I'm saying that right. So Tim says the latest Doctor Who with Ncuti Gatwa are a co-production with Disney. What does co-production, Tim? I mean, what does it mean? So Tim says something of a mixed bag in terms of the stories. There are some good ones, but it's been very hit and miss for me so far. Not seen the last 2, so no spoilers. I haven't seen any of this season, so yeah. And Tim says it's a co-production with BBT and Disney. It's still made in Cardiff by a BBC team. Disney basically put the money in. BBC made it, is I think the way it works. So Doug Jeffries, good enough is a lot lower quality than your good enough. So his good enough quality is a lot lower than my good enough. So Nathan's What's the Delta? I've got a video on it. Nathan, the Transport Delta. It's a massive Millennium Falconer-like that's about this big. It's another ship that my guys will eventually manage to find at some point. But I want to put the clutter in it. I was playing Starfield when I finished it. I want to do a whole video on how clutter brings things to life, and I haven't yet. Stephen, sometimes the hardest is knowing when to stop. Indeed, yes. So Doug says the Transport Delta is a ship by Second Dynasty inspired by the Millennium Falcon. That's true. What does code funded mean? Take credit, Nathan. So money, it means money. All it means is that Disney put money into the BBC so that they could put more production value in and do bigger sets and more CGI. And then Timber says co-funding is funding by 2 partner companies. Tim's another ship to find. Yeah, there's quite a long way before you find that one because it's quite a lot bigger. And so, yeah, but you will find it eventually. In fact, I've got about 20 spaceships. So there are a lot for you to find. And you won't necessarily find them all. But yeah, there's definitely a lot for you to find. Going back to perfection versus good enough. As you can see, I have gone down a major rabbit hole with sanding. I've lost one. Oh well. A major rabbit hole with sanding. And it's causing me to be backlogged. And I'm looking at that one, which was printed at 0.08 with a few print issues with this salmon skin. And then I'm looking at my droids. And my droids are massive. I mean, they're massive. They're like 6 foot high, massive. They're taller. I think they're 6'4" or something. They're about the size of my dad, a battle droid. And there's a lot to do. And most of it's okay, but where it needed support and it's got circular bits, which if you think about a battle droid, is actually, there's a circular bit like that at the top of every arm, leg, joint. So there's some by the ankles, there's some by the knees, there's some by the hips, there's some by the wrists, there's some by, not the wrists actually, some by the elbows, and there's some by the shoulders. And these were supported, and they're not circular. There's a sort of a step at the bottom where they've flattened out, and it's slightly out and it's slightly flat. So they need sanding on one bit and then filling round the other circle. And they're likely to get a little wear because they're going to be moving against each other. And it's taken me a lot of sanding to even get them to just go into each other. So either I sand, and you don't want them to be loose because you want them to be more friction fit. So I need to go through those. And the fact that it's taken me so long to sand this much better printed ship is now making me worry, am I ever going to get around to sanding my droids? And I tried using thinned wood filler, which people rave about for filling out layer lines, and thinned Liquitex modelling paste, which people rave about for filling out their layer lines. And I wasn't, actually the wood filler's fine. It sands okay, it's a little bit rough, it sands okay. And if you wet sand it, it just disappears really quickly. So you can take huge amounts off if you want to smooth it out very quickly, and it will just stay in the gap then. So I could, but it will take out of the layer lines if you wet sand it. So I could do something with that, and people thin these products and they put them on and it sits in my layer lines, and then I can spray it with some spray putty and call it good, but I will have to do something to fill the edges. So there comes a point, at what point does my good enough become by project? So for my Trailblazer, I'm going to have a lot of close-up photos of it. I'm going to be using the interior. I want it to be perfect because I've put this much time in it that the small amount of extra sanding 3 weekends after I sanded it the last time to get that to sit flush will happen. Because otherwise, I will just be fed up and it will always annoy me. I wasn't doing it in a rush. It was a personal project. It now is being used in the RPG, but Doug's printing one for them. So, you know, I can cope with it taking a long time. I'm not in a rush on it. However, my droids need putting together, they need painting, and they need doing while it's summer so I can spray paint them outside. I need to get on and get them done. And I cannot afford, they're good enough, can't be perfection, because there's too many print flaws. And I'm not going to reprint because it would cost too much. But I do need to just get on and get them put together and get them painted and get them done. Because I have other things I want to print and paint, other projects. Galactic Artillery did some macro binoculars last month, and I'd like to print those. And actually I've got these Bell & Howell cine cameras. I bought a couple of them secondhand, and they're about 30 quid secondhand. And they were what they used for the original Rebel sort of viewfinders in Star Wars, the original Star Wars. Trust me when I say they weigh a ton. They weigh a ton. These guys were, getting them up there. I want to scratch build something with them. I actually want to do a 3D print exterior and have the front slot into it. I think what they did was something not dissimilar. They built a sort of styrene exterior and slotted them in. So it's, I've got projects I want to get on with. I've got my pixel arcs that I've got here I want to program. I've got my lightsaber. Crix was asking earlier, and Doug mentioned earlier about lightsabers. So I had 2 people today asking about lightsabers, and there's a Kickstarter at the moment for modular lightsabers. And I'm like, I want to design one. And Doug's like, yeah, you've got all the stuff for it. And I'm like, yeah, and I've had it for 18 months. So does perfection hold it up? Does perfection stop you modelling? Probably. And actually, I was just looking at chat and I saw I've pinned my Kickstarter link to the top. So if you want to go and sign up for my Kickstarter to find out when it goes live, to support it, then the link's at the top of chat. Just go and click on that link, and I put the pre-launch page live today for the first time. So let me know what you think of it. So Nathan says, I have my own idea. I told Laurie about making some kind of steampunk Hang on, I just scrolled up and then lost it. Steampunk spaceship, but trains are running inside. Well, there are definitely trains running inside the Invisible Hand, which is a massive... oh, no, it was the Maleficent. Was it the Maleficent? Yeah, it's the Maleficent, which is the Iron Callan big separatist spaceship, which Grievous has in the Clone Wars. So you can definitely do that. You're still trying to figure out how to pull it off with the lack of space I have. So Doug says Space 1889 role-playing game has some nice art for steampunk spaceships. That's good. That would be a cool. And Nathan says, in case you're wondering what type of space, it's like the same type of space like Office Desk, if that makes sense. I think you just have to look at scales. So Nathan asked, was it a video game? No, it's a role-playing game, so it will be a book and minis probably. Timber Cathy, you may be using fillers that are too hard. The filler should be very soft, so a light sanding instantly takes off the excess and stops when you hit the tops of the ridges. Well, I thought that's what this modelling paste was going to be, thinned, but it turns out it clogs your sandpaper, and the flexible one was a little bit too much, but that is quite soft, and actually the wood filler is also incredibly soft. The only time and that's what I've used to fill this, and the rest of it is filled with filler putty, spray putty. I know people use super glue to fill. I never use super glue to fill unless I've actually using a really thin one I've over sanded and I'm trying to sort of firm up the surface beneath. I never use filler putty, super glue, because it's always stronger and firmer than everything around it, and I can never sand it flush. I know people do, but I've never managed to sand it flush. So there we go. I think they are quite soft. Wood filler's certainly quite soft. But I'm worried then about, will it be too soft? Will it just chip in the joints where the circles go round? So Doug, no, it's a 1990s era pen and paper game. You can probably find art from it on Google. So Doug says throwing good time after bad. Is that more sanding? Maybe, but actually I quite like a fettling. It's mindless. I'm just sanding. It's just, for an hour or two, just go and sand, leave it another month, go and do another hour or two of sanding. There's something quite therapeutic about just wet sanding something. Just therapeutic. But I don't feel the same way about doing it for the droids, which is what's putting me off them. So Nathan, Doug, I'm confused in what you're saying. I kind of get it. You don't mind putting a link for that so we can find it. Doug won't be able to put a link because he's not a moderator, I'm afraid. Just Google it, I guess, instead. Oh, and Tim is reminding everybody, don't forget to bash the like button, folks. So Tig says, what's John? Nathan, there's been a couple of steampunk layouts at the Wally show at the NEC. There should be some videos out there that have them. Yeah, they're mostly Laurie Calvert's. I've seen a couple of his, and Laurie's a lovely guy. I met him through the Great Model Railway Challenge. He was really good. Doug says, I can't post links here, but Google image search space 1889 ships. Thanks, Doug. And Stephen says, just bash the like button. Well done. We're on 29 likes and 20 concurrent viewers. So that's cool. What is that? I've never heard of it before. The Clovis spaceship. I'm sorry, I'm losing track, Nathan, on which one you're talking about. There we go. Yeah, and then Google Laurie Calvert for Steampunk Railways. He is the guy. And I think it will be his that you've seen, John. There may be others, but definitely I've seen a couple of his that are like that. Okay, so we've been talking about my problems with perfection, and I was talking earlier about how I am really critical of myself and how therefore I could get too caught up in the minutiae. Now you'll find this when you're doing 3D design. You'll spend ages tweaking something so it lines up perfectly, and then you realise that you're talking about 0.01 of a millimetre, and actually 0.01 of a millimetre is never ever going to really cause an issue. unless you're trying to look for something to actually physically be attached. And there's the reasons why I do get anal about these things. But realistically, some of the 3D print design programs we have can force you to be over attentive to minutiae. And sometimes I just run out of time. And I find YouTube was the worst for this. When I was just modelling for myself, I need a deadline to get something done. So I would try and get things done for contests so I could get my AP achievement programme from the NMRA mostly. And so I'd have them done for contests, and that was a deadline. Or I'd set up people coming round, and then I'd have to finish it for people coming round because I need a deadline to do stuff. But when when I was a content creator and working just for YouTube, doing stuff for that, I really struggled with that. I haven't got time to get this perfect. I haven't got time to get this right. I just have to cut my losses now. And people would then go in and criticise stuff and say, oh, you could do this, as if I was going to go back and redo it. And I never go back and redo things. It's not in my nature. I will do a new project with the learning points from it. I won't go back and fix the old one. It will just sit there and bug me. But I couldn't be perfect because I didn't have the time, especially when you're trying to do a video a week. So I've got to say, time constraints to me are the thing that stop me seeking that overly perfect model that actually probably doesn't exist. But there are whole people out there that do small models like Gundam, they do military models, and they will spend months doing everything. Now, I asked somebody why they didn't glue, I think it was a nut and bolt of some description. Why didn't they glue it in a certain way? And he says, oh, it's the wrong type of glue for that. It just doesn't sand well and blah, blah, blah. And it amazed me that some of the things that I was quite happily doing, he was like, no, it doesn't give quite the quality I want. And his work was amazing, but he would spend a year doing one small model. And so if you're the kind of person that wants to do one small model a year and do it perfectly, or spend 30 years doing a model ship, you know, being a perfectionist is probably where you're going to be at. If you want to do Gundam and get those gloriously, beautifully smooth paint jobs, there's a lot of sanding and perfecting in there, getting rid of nubs and mold lines and stuff like that. And, you know, those people make them look amazing. There's a lot of prep work that goes unseen in their modelling. So generally I would say the smaller the item you are doing, and the finer the original materials that we use to do it, like plastic injection molding machine will have a finer finish than 3D prints. Resin prints will have a finer finish generally than FDM, though not as much nowadays. And generally, the smaller you're going, the more you need to worry about people looking at things close up. Because they're smaller, they're going to be looking at them close up. By the time I get to terrain, I am literally printing these, and that's all I'm doing. I am printing these, and I am going to put them out and paint them. I'm not sanding a single one of them. I am not worrying about layer lines. I've done that at 0.08. I've done them in matte filament. Those layer lines are mostly gone. If I have worries about layer lines, I have tricks to mask them with the painting. One of which is not to put a wash on. It's to put a sort of a thicker wash to make sure that you don't let it sit, anything just sit in the layer lines where it will show them up. Another is not to dry brush, which really highlights layer lines, but to use a weathering sponge to dab on to catch the highlights, because then you're dabbing, not scraping, and it's putting a pattern on. So I have my techniques that I use on, say, the Transport Delta and all the ships I've done to date, and they really do help hide those layer lines, and I've got to them over years of doing them. And for me, I've now got a week to paint all of the buildings for this. It's not going live till early June, but I need to be able to get those out now to do marketing. So I need to get them painted, I need to get the pictures out in the next week or two, and then start getting some videos out as well. Need to edit up the videos I've done. So I've got a lot of a schedule. So I won't be spending too long doing any one thing. And every single time I do a Kickstarter, it is hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of models that I need to paint. And as a result, I've got really good at batch painting huge amounts of models and not worrying about perfection. Because, quite frankly, I can't worry about perfection. There's too much to do. Anyway, back to chat. John, I saw him at the show of one of his steampunk layouts when there was a lot of teams from the show there. There was a new one last year in the new show. He's very good. He also did a Thunderbirds one that's quite fun. From the Great Model Railway Challenge, that's where I met him. And Nathan, what does overextended mean? Does that mean very rucked or not right with the models? I've lost the context, sorry, Nathan, to remember what I said. Sorry. Anyway, there we go. So, what have we got? Oh, we've got 20 minutes. So I think I've done perfect versus good to death. Normally at this point, when people want to distract me, they start talking about classic sci-fi. So instead I'm going to ask, I've been watching things like Andor recently and really enjoying it. Actually, I hated Andor the first time I came around. I thought it was so slow, but then I did it on a rewatch over 3 or 4 days and it was much quicker going through it back to back. So I've been watching Andor and Tales of the Underworld. But the one thing that I'm also stalled on at the moment, and I'd like to pick people's brains a bit about it at the moment, is Scut City. So I need to get on with Scut City. And the whole point of it is that everything should be modular. And I've still got one level that I think I might move, maybe 3 inches. They're the 500 mil actually, 500 mil up or down, because it's got a really tall one. But I might leave it because it's my tallest shelf and it's like 300, I think. So it's really tall. Most of my shelves are like 100 to 150. And they have grid forge at the bottom, which was what we saw earlier. Nathan just said he's going to go. Thanks, Nathan. Have a great day. And nice to chat to you too. Enjoyed. Have fun. And so I've got grid forge at the bottom and I've printed all the grid forge and I've got the circle cut out and it needs to go in and fit in place. And now I need to do the backdrops and the ceilings. And I showed off, I think, 3 or 4 maybe live streams ago, this process so far. I've hit a bit of a snafu because I can't quite work out how to get the grid forge in with everything the way I've been designing it. So at the moment, it has let's use a prop. So it has a grid forge base, which is wider, so it goes out to the side with the walls attached. So it then has an upright attached, yeah? And between the uprights are gaps with a slot at the bottom and a slot at the top, and I can push up and drop down a piece of card for now so that I blot everything out, and then eventually a 3D print. It's a 4mm slot, so I should be able to just slot something up and slot it down. A couple of mil thick is what these are. It's maybe not quite as thick as I'd like, but it's going to have panels and stuff like on it. So I'll have 3mm thick panels. They may be 3D printed or they may actually be sheets of styrene or something else. There's no reason to 3D print them particularly. They're going to be all round the back and they're 3 foot by 3 foot or 4 foot by 3 foot and somewhere between 100 to 300 high. The uprights have got hollows in, so I can put wooden dowels in. And the wooden dowels are going to help with compression for what's on top. And then I've got my circle cut out the inside, which you'll probably all have forgotten by now because it was many live streams ago. But this is like the entry port for the spaceships to come up and down. It's the ventilation. And so for view reasons, the shelves are open so you can then see all the way around, and it enables me to step inside them and reach the back of the shelves. So I've got the uprights designed, haven't tested the slot in bit yet, and I need to do the ceilings, and I'm stuck. And I'm doing a Kickstarter and have been since January, so I've not really given it a lot of thought, which means the grid forge piece has been out there. I've printed 3 or 4 shelves worth of it. And I've just stopped because, well, A, my printers are doing other things, and B, I need to work out that it's all going to fit first. So I've got it all sat there. I need, this is the weird thing, I need to get the ceiling attached. So the upright is basically got, and this is the problem. Everything clips from different directions. There's no ability to move the shelves up and down to slide anything in because they're screwed in. And in the act of putting it in, you would negate access to the screws. So everything is kind of going around, slotted in. So it's either got to slot in from the front or go in and slot sideways, which is fine. I can then slide the clips. I've got the uprights and I need to get the ceilings on. And I was going to have them attached to put them in, so they're like a little box, but I haven't got anything in the middle to hang them off yet. I think eventually there'll be LED little like C's that clip round the edge in a strip round with LEDs for each level, so the spaceships know that it's a level, and the very bottom one will have red, and they'll have sort of bright lights at the top, and they'll get dimmer with a few missing as you get further down. And it will be the space to match exactly a cheap LED strip, so I can have them. And I might do the entertainment district in multicolour, just for a bit of variety, as if, guys, this is the entertainment district. So that's going round, but I need to put the ceilings on. But the whole point of this is that it's modular. I can remove the tiles and swap them around. So if I don't have to make the decision yet on what goes on the floor. The backdrops are going to be slot in and slot out. So I can put a bit of black card in for now, and then I can take them in or out. Because, you know, a lot of these shelves haven't even got notionally what's going to go on them. And some of them are for future Kickstarters. You know, I'm hoping to put all the buildings from this around in there and eventually maybe swap out the style packs I'm not interested in, like the junk ones. I probably won't use those. They're not really the styling I want, but, you know, they'll get painted. I'll swap those out, and those buildings though, because they're modular, I'll use in future Kickstarters, but, you know, I'll be able to swap things in and out. Let's just put it that way. So how am I going to do the ceilings? My problem is I have to take things apart to slide them in. So the grid forge will clip back together, but then the gaps, the uprights go across the gaps to clip the two sides together. And then the ceiling will be the same. So it becomes harder to split those. I'll end up with missing clips. And if I'm putting the ceiling on, I want it to be modular. I don't want to decide what's going in there yet. I don't want to have to do the lighting for the whole thing all in one go. It's going to be really expensive. I want to light a level when I put the buildings into that level. You know, and there's only a few levels I've got the buildings for decided on yet. So I need to be able to get it out to put light strips in. I need to be able to get at it, but to clip, it probably is going to have to clip down from above, and there's no room to put a clip in. Anyway, I'm really struggling with it. I need, anyone have any ideas on how to show off, you know, how to make a removable clipping or non-clipping ceiling? Because I could clip things into it, but then gravity will always be pulling against the clips. And I don't know how great even a supporty clip will be. They're also quite long, but I don't know, you know, this is half a supporty clip, so it's going to have to be at least that deep then. You know, how much will I be able to, guys, I'm struggling. So that is the thing that's holding up getting Scut City any further, because it needs to be a modular base so that I can get things in or out. So if anybody's got any ideas, either let me know now or, you know, there's loads of photos of it on my Discord, so pop in over there and we can have a chat about it at some point. Because I do need to get on and get that put together to clear it out of my kitchen, to get it off my granite worktop so I can actually use my kitchen again, because at the moment there's a 3 foot by 4 foot one partly assembled on there. But chat's really quiet. I want you guys to come and help. And it's hard to do without pictures, isn't it? I just feel like I've shown it so many times already and it's not going anywhere. But there we go. Anyone got any questions for me? Normally people ask me loads and loads of questions on chat at this point, and I'm like trying to wind it up with 10 minutes to go. But at this point, everyone's gone really quiet. It's like, ooh, really quiet. Anyway, okay. Well, in that case, I will talk a little bit more about creating a modular system, because that was one of the other things that... So this system, Doug and John were really helpful with doing early test bins in grey before I did any of the textures. So before I did the textures and spent loads of time applying it and did all of these different walls and doors, John and Tim, each of them, John and Doug, each of them printed off one and gave me some feedback, and we tweaked some of the things and worked on it a bit to make sure that the clip, when it goes down now, isn't too firm, isn't firm enough, that it holds it. There's a lot of issues with them splaying outwards like that if there's 4 holes. Generally, if you've only got 1 or 2 holes, slots in it, it's fine. But trying to get this here, what I want is that in future I can use this system, apply a texture to it for a new Kickstarter. So say I wanted to do the Market District or the Entertainment District next. I could come up with and they'd be quite cyberpunk field. I could come up with something that uses the same base buildings. I could do new doors, new windows, and a new wall texture that would have to dip in, but still use all the work that I've done on these. So they become inherently a future suitable sort of building. So I spent quite a lot of time thinking about clips versus gravity. Now at the moment, all of this is held with gravity. If you pick up the buildings, you'll see they sometimes fall apart. And that's because, as I said, I haven't clipped anything because it's all going to be basically taken apart to paint in a sec. I would probably, if I was putting this on my table, clip it. If I was, and even these things like those sandbags, you can clip them. There's long clips that go down into the groove, and in the groove that the walkway sits on, you can see the grooves on some of the tops. There's actually clip holes further down, so you can clip in. And on my Spaceport Kickstarter, I used the same spacing actually on it, the same groove, but it was a wider building. And I didn't use the gravity blocks, so you had to put clips in. But this time I really wanted these gravity blocks, as I call the little blocks on the corner. So there's 4 corner blocks, and they enable you to just put it down with gravity and you won't knock it off that easily. It makes things a bit better for just being able to assemble like this if you want to just do something modular. Personally, if I was going to have this as a playset, I would assemble each building, but I wouldn't connect the buildings together. So I wouldn't collect the 3, 2, 1 on the back, but I would have the door, well, the door doesn't clip, but I would have the top clipped to the base. If I have 4 slots, like on this front one, there's no way you can clip that, and I probably would end up gluing it just to keep it there. But for the moment, keeping them separate is great for painting. So really, so I hope that my next Kickstarter will be able to reuse some of these assets. And I'd like to do a market district. I'd like to do an entertainment district. The 3-inch cube system, I feel is quite limiting in some ways. I actually prefer something like a 4-inch cube for a small building. But I think the 2x1s look reasonable and the 2x2s look reasonable. I did also design 2x3s and 3x1s and 3x3s, but they're just so big. They take up so much space. And they may still come out as part of the Kickstarter. But one of the problems I've now got is I'd have to do 5 packs of, so I'd need to do 5 more sets of the roofs. I've got them in one set already, maybe even 2 sets already, but I'd need to do the other 3 sets. It wouldn't take that long. So they may be a stretch goal to bring out the 3x3s, the 2x3s and the 1x3s. And originally Doug said, well, they don't fit on my A1 Mini or his A1 Mini, because everything else is made to fit under 180. So it then becomes, people with bigger printers would be able to print them, and they print fine on my bamboo. So I don't want it to be part of the core, because not everybody can print it, and I like to keep it so that everybody can print it. But maybe it's a stretch goal that we bring out some of those extra ones with the extra base pack amounts for those. So we'll have a bit of a feel about it. I'm also thinking of doing a Kickstarter only model. So you will only be able to get it if you back the Kickstarter. And the reason for that is a lot of people say, well, I can get it later. They don't want to necessarily back the Kickstarter. Some of it's a pricing issue. Oh, it was a Mark 4S. That's fascinating, because I thought that was the same size as, Doug just said the big ones didn't fit on his Presser Mark 4S. I thought they fit on my bamboo, and I thought that was the same size as a Mark 4S. So they're basically 9 inches, which is 210, I think, somewhere around about there. So they're not massive, but 200 is a cut-off size. My presser, I was printing on it this week, does look really small, the plate, but Jabber, my big printer, wasn't printing the translucent filament at all well. It just wasn't going to the edges, it wasn't sticking well. I don't know if it was a sticking issue, a levelling issue, but I just put it on the presser because I knew it would print. And it's too small a roll to go in my AMS. And I was busy printing other stuff on the other one. So I thought it wants to be at 2.2 layer height anyway, so I may as well just shove it on the presser, which printed them fine because it's on a spool holder. So I might do some hanging shields. And this was an original Titanfall inspiration, but basically they go into the groove, and they're shields that hang down. They're like barriers that hang down the side. And I might make those Kickstarter only models, so you only get them if you back your Kickstarter, because I didn't want to have an early bird, because you've got 5 style packs, so there's going to be at least probably 5 or 6 pledge levels, because you'll have 1, 2, 3, all of them. Collector's edition and merchant's license. So it just gets up to 6 pledge levels. It starts seeming too many for me. I think it just seems a lot. So I might be, to encourage people to buy on the Kickstarter, you can only get the hanging shields or whatever it is I pick on this as well. And then I need to think about what is the free gift going to be. And I haven't quite decided what the free gift is going to be yet. But I think another stretch goal is going to be ladders, because obviously ladders will be important. And I could do ladder wells for people that want interiors, which would be a half one of these, which would be enable you to put a ladder inside as well. So I might do that for interest. Anyway, there's a few ideas coming. So presser bed, maximum printable area is 250mm in width, 210 in length. Yeah, it must be 210.8 or something, or just something just over. So what is it? It's 150. Okay, 76.2, 152.4, plus another 76.2. Yeah, it just fits on my bamboo, which has a corner missing. Anyway, that's why it'll just be a stretch goal. So, you know, you probably could get a 3x1 on if you went diagonally. And I actually feel the 3x1 is probably the most interesting of that. I also had triple doors and windows spaces in them, but I found the triple doors got really, really they just got too flexible. And I did a triple. So I had a 3x3 with a triple out this side and a triple out that side. And it literally just broke when you picked it up, because the weight of this corner was enough to snap where the little holes are, the boxes, enough to snap off the 3D print. I was just like, yeah, it's not quite there. So yeah, so anyway, modular systems have been a fascinating thing to spend quite a lot of time learning and thinking about. And yeah, it's been interesting. I can see there are flaws in every system, and one of the issues that I hit is printability. If you want to do support free, so a lot of the main sets will print these buildings, everything there integral, and you just paint it up. But the problem with that is you've got to do a bar across the top for the door at some point to put the door in, or to have the door jamb. And as soon as you print that bar across the top, you've got to bridge it. If you want to bridge this, it will need a support. As I was saying earlier, my printer won't even do a few millimeters to do at 0.08 to do a clip hole, a supporty clip hole, not even an open lock clip hole. So it becomes much harder to design. So I ended up designing all the doors to print flat, so you can do nice thin window frames and thinner doors and have the detail. But then if you want, you know, you can slot in the tops where I need on the multi-story, so they've flinted flat. But with having those slots comes a small amount of flexibility, which is why I think you probably would want to end up gluing some of them in the end. Oh, we've got people talking about size. So the 2x3 should fit, says Tamsin. 3x3 wouldn't. Yeah. And Doug says I could fit in a 9x6, which is saying exactly the same thing. The 3x3 is 228.6, so it fits on my printer, but only a few millimeters to the edge of the printer bed. Yeah, it wasn't a lot of space for the 3x3 on mine. But there are people out there with bigger printers, and actually I thought the 3x3 was too big a building for use, really. I have some, and they just take up so much space. So I'll probably do it as a stretch goal. They've done the buildings, but I just then need to do the roofs. Spaces and roofs for them, and that's all I'd need to do. I don't need to do anything else other than space and roofs. Everything else just comes across. So you know, that's where we go. 58. Right, so back to me. There we go. So there we go. I'm hoping that the next live stream will therefore have loads of painting of me, and I'll be talking a lot about how to improve your prints and paint jobs so that you don't have to spend a lot of time on it. You know, when I've been printing these hundreds of models, I've really got it down to a fine art. I am not going to paint these. The colour of the print is the colour of the building. It's that bone white. And the colour of everything else is this brown for like rust. And some of them I wish had been different colours, and it may be that I do paint some eventually in a different colour. But I'm actually gonna, if I want to do different colours on doors, I'm gonna be using the painting sponges to paint those so that they look worn, or I'm gonna hand paint them just slightly different colour. The Cyberpunk especially, I would have liked to have done maybe in fluorescent colours. So I may yet paint those with a fluorescent colour. We'll have to see. I'm not sure on fluorescent paints. So that's all a future to come. So that'll be the next one. And I was planning to go live before the next live stream, but I think I'm a bit behind where I want to be with getting, not with actually getting the modelling done because I'm nearly there, but with getting the marketing done. And I need to be doing better on the marketing. So I've got a friend helping with the marketing. You know, I'm paying him, it's not, but I get someone I know. So that's really cool. So there we go. That's what I'm doing for next time. Thank you all for watching. I feel this was a bit disjointed because I haven't got any modelling really done, but yeah, it's getting there. Soon there'll be loads flooding the channel again, and then I'll hopefully get on and get some videos edited up over the next month or so anyway, especially now it's so fast on my new Mac. So thanks guys. Good night everybody. And Tig was just saying he'd be tempted to use the 1x3 roof on a 1x2 for a balcony. Yeah, that'll be good. Right, so bye folks, thanks, and have a great month. See you next month, and don't forget the link for the Kickstarter's at the top of the chat. See you soon. Bye.